Hi, everyone, and welcome to AtScale's Data-Driven Podcast. And today's special guest is Sanjeev Mohan. And Sanjeev is the principal of SanjMo and has been an industry analyst and Gartner analyst for years. And I'm so happy that Sanjeev is on the podcast because we got lots of questions for Sanjeev. We're going to have a really great discussion on the state of the industry for data and analytics and what the future looks like. So Sanjeev, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Dave. It's such a pleasure. We've known each other for so many years. In different events we've met, and now here I'm at your podcast. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's the data and analytics sort of community is it's still small enough that that you tend to know each other, and so it's really great to sort of develop those relationships. I always tell anybody who's young is like, always take that meeting because you never know where it's going to go, and it usually pays off in the long run. So always take the opportunity to meet people and get to know them. Sanjeev, so let's just talk about you for a minute here. Why don't you tell listeners a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today, because you have a fascinating story.
Thank you. I started my career at really in the US at Oracle. I was part of the database team early days of 1990s, and we really got into very deep into internals of Oracle and helped our initial customers. I have to say, at that time, Silicon Valley was still growing up. It was a very young place. Enjoyed my time there, but then .com boom happened. So I quickly jumped into the .com space. That was probably the most exhilarating time of our lives in terms of excitement, building out, all these websites from scratch. We were on a mission to change the world till the .com bust happened. So we went through that time. That was quite a journey. And I feel it's back to the time when data is so pivotal to everything that we do. It's a foundation on which new companies are being built. There's a famous saying from Mark Andreessen, software is eating the world. I think data is eating the world now. It's eating
Great.
software. Yeah.
I agree. So Sanjeev, what happened after? Because you've been a very, very big person in the industry. So what happened after that .com boom and bust, and what sort of got you more involved on the being an industry expert?
Yes. Thanks for that. After the .com bust, I spent a few years in the consulting space, and then I decided to join Gartner. Gartner is an absolutely amazing place. It gives its people this platform to research topics. And I remember my background was database management systems. I'd been a DBA, a data architect. I built data warehouses. And I remember it was about 5 years ago when I got on a Gartner client inquiry from a client. And this guy says, well, how do I get ready for the GDPR? And I'm asking him, GD what? What's GDPR? Never heard of such a strange acronym. And that opened up this whole world of data governance for me, which up to that point, I had avoided to the best of my ability because governance was so confining. It was all about compliance and fines, Sarbanes-Oxley, that kind of a thing. But all of a sudden, data governance became this way to expose all your data assets in a very secure, governed, curated manner. And I added data governance to my coverage, and I spent many years in Gartner covering this space till last year, July of 2021, when I decided that although I could have stayed in Gartner, it's an amazing place, no doubts about it, but I wanted to, be independent so I could advise more people and have even a wider breadth of coverage. Now, what I do is not just DBMS and data governance. I've gotten into data observability, which is a brand new space. Hopefully, I played some part in defining data observability space. Data ops is super exciting. Semantic layers. There's a whole variety of topics that are coming around in this expanding ecosystem, metrics layer, feature stores. So this is what I do now.
Yeah, so that sort of leads me into like what should be top of mind for a data and analytics leader. I think you just rattled off a bunch of really important topics. So maybe we needed to drill down on a little bit on that. So let's just start with data governance actually, because you're right that when it came to data governance, you could think of it as like as how to constrain users, but the constraints for making data available for consumption has always been the fear that you're going to be exposing the wrong data to the wrong people. So if you do have a strong governance practice and a strong governance layer, then you can share more data because you have more confidence that that data is going to only be seen by the people it should be seen, right?
Yeah, in fact, people say the sexiest job of 21st century is data scientist. I think it's the people who do data governance. They're the ones who are helping companies leverage data assets. The difference between a successful company and an unsuccessful company is the successful company is leveraging the data and the insights that are hidden in plain sight. And to do that, you need data governance.
Yeah, and I've seen look, it's and that's a key piece to the semantic layer, and then from my perspective, because it's there's two parts of it, right? There's making data available to everyone in the tool where they live. So don't force them to learn new habits to use new ways of querying data. So that's one. But then it's like you got to make sure that that they get access to all the data that they should have access to, and traditionally IT has been very, suspicious about sort of making data available because of those fears of the breach or the data being getting into the wrong hands. So I think that's a really empowering thing. Data for everyone. You're right, Sanjeev. It's like I've seen customers who really take that approach of we're going to make data available to everyone who needs it, and they're much more successful than those that are sort of trying to dole out access to data based on some arcane rules of who gets to see what.
Yeah, agreed. IT was the keeper of all the technology at one point in time, but we've gone through some major inflection points in just recent few years. Cloud being one of them, machine learning is another one of them. So the businesses are there's so much more power now that they can sidestep IT and have a whole environment. So now we are in a realm where IT and business are two sides of the same coin. That's completely aligned, or they should be aligned. Otherwise, the companies are not going to be able to get the most out of their data assets.
Sanjeev, when it comes to like the business and IT partnership, there's a lot of talk out there about data mesh. And
Yeah,
when you were at Gartner, you guys were pushing data fabric. That was like a big sort of push
right.
towards some of your research. Can you explain to the audience just a little bit about what's the difference between data fabric versus data mesh, and and what should we care about as a
Yeah.
data and analytics leader?
So the first question is, we always start with why. Why are we even talking about these things? And the reason for that is because we now are analyzing far more data than ever before. I was blown away by this IDC research that said in the next 2 years, 750 million new apps will be developed, which is more than the number of apps in the last 40 years.
Wow.
So this is the amount, the desire of data consumers need to access data. So IT or data engineers become sort of the bottleneck in this whole process. The idea for data mesh and data fabric is how do we bring agility into developing data products. Data mesh is a organizational concept, and data
Mhm.
Fabric is a technology implementation. So they are literally apples and bananas, and people compare them, but you can't really compare them. What
Mhm.
the mesh says is that because the data engineers are hard to find, and you cannot constantly keep going to the same data engineers and say, I need this new data product delivered to me now or yesterday. So decentralize your data environment into domains. Every business domain, since they're the expert on what is business semantic and the meaning of that data, they're the ones who should develop the products and make them available through some data sharing or some mechanism. So that's data mesh. What Data Fabric says is that we've had a profusion of best of breed technologies. There's just so many best of breed technologies. So integrate it in a way that you're spending less time trying to stitch together different components, but not only so data fabric becomes the data integration pattern. On
Mhm.
you put a knowledge graph and a semantic layer. That becomes the key. So the business people can go directly to a knowledge graph. They understand it's an intuitive business term, not a name of a table and a column, and so they are very quickly able to start using the system.
That's a fantastic explanation. So they're not opposed to each other. They're really one's a technology implementation or
Right.
like an architectural sort of pattern, and data mesh is more of an organizational style.
Yeah.
And so you talked about data mesh and creating and decentralizing that creation of data products. So Sanjeev, how do you prevent sort of the chaos from reoccurring? Like, we went through the self-service BI revolution. Tableau sort of really pushed that, and the business was empowered to create their own data products. But, the enterprise suffered with consistency and control really. I know that's why I started AtScale. I had that. I brought Tableau into Yahoo, and now everybody had their own definition of what an ad impression was or what a click was, and there was no way to sort of standardize that. So different dashboards had different numbers, and nobody trusted the data. So how can we do and implement a data mesh decentralized style of data product creation? Because I really think that's the way you scale. But how do we do it with control and consistency without letting things go crazy?
That is a great question. The problem that we are facing in the market right now is people are developing their own solution and putting the stamp of a data mesh on it and declaring
Mhm.
victory. So Zhamak Dehghani did an amazing job of defining what are the four principles or pillars of data mesh. What she did not do was get into the technology side. So
Mhm.
she didn't define like how should people do it. So now there are multiple definitions, and you are absolutely right. If you just decentralize everything, you will have duplication of data. It becomes the same problem as a set of data silos now. So and a host of other problems. What I have been advising clients is that it's a mixture of decentralization and centralization. Decentralize your domain driven development because subject matter experts sit in the domains, they know the data the best. But governance should always be centralized. Why do I say because let's say, you have three different departments. Sales defines customer in a certain way. Marketing has a totally different definition of what a customer is. Product team has yet another definition. How can you possibly create a, a business level report on customer when you have three different definitions? That's one point, one problem. The second problem is all these accessing the customer requires some policy. Salespeople should be allowed to see certain aspects of customer because they're selling to them, but finance team may have totally different needs because they have to build them and maybe do
Mhm.
collect, right? So they
Mhm.
need bank details which salespeople should not have. If you've got a decentralized environment, then you've got decentralized policies, which means there's no common way to govern it. So I believe that governance layer needs to be centralized. There's a common definition, the common set of data access policies, and that is sort of your window into the data product. The data products could be then decentralized. So you need this combination to
Yeah.
make it work.
I completely agree with you on that. Some of our customers, before the whole data mesh concept became popular, they called it the hub and spoke style. So
Yeah.
the hub there was central governance, and it was like not just governance, it was also architecture, right? It was like, what tools are we going to use? Let's make sure we're all using the same tools, the same standards, but also conform dimensions. And so you talked about the customer dimension. Maybe that should be defined either in one domain and they own it, and everybody else has to use it, or that's defined by that central team and used by all the different domains. But there still needs to be that governance. And to me, I like to think of it as hub and spoke, where the
Yeah.
spoke is the domains and the hub is that central governance entity, whether it be a data team or what have you. Because I think that's a style that could work.
Correct.
Um,
And
versus free for all and
yes,
full decentralization.
I completely agree. In fact, what the point you raise is extremely important that we sometimes forget. We treat data mesh as something that's brand spanking new. What data mesh did really well was it packaged the existing principles in a very neat way, so people could fathom what to do. But the techniques and the approaches are not new. What you've been doing in with hub and spoke is what we are doing today. So sometimes, people think, this is a brand new way of doing things. No, it's not. But now we have a structure, and we call that structure a data mesh.
Yeah, and I do. I like the concepts. I like having common terminology. I like having a data steward, having data domains. It really does help when it comes to communicating and speaking and talking about how technology sort of fits and enables that picture. So that's great. That's great. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Like if I were at Yahoo and I were running analytics again, I would definitely choose. I would call it a hub and spoke, but it would be that sort of decentralization with standardization. I don't think you can have decentralization without some sort of standardization and governance. But I would definitely would go that route.
So if I may add one quick thing and go on a bit of a rant, you know, it,
Love it. Rant on.
okay, all right. So, so in our industry, we love terminologies, hypes, and we invent things just because they're just fashionable. One of them that is used for data mesh is it's a techno-social problem or a socio-technical problem, and I was like taken aback. I'm like, wow, that sounds pretty nifty. What is socio-technical? When I dug deeper, it turns out socio is people and processes. So focus on people, the consumers, and the process, less on technology. But socio-technical, if I parse it, is people, process, technology. I'm like, oh wait, we've been talking about it for 15 years now, but that just sounds old fashioned, but socio technical. So anyway, hashtag rant off.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Hey, so one of the other things you brought up in the very beginning that was top of mind for you was as data observability, and that's also getting talked a lot about now. And I'll be the first to admit it's like, okay, so I don't necessarily get it yet. So can you help me understand, help the audience understand, what is data observability in your mind, and why is it important for data and analytics leaders to be thinking about?
Okay, perfect. I feel personally data observability should get a lot more attention than it gets today. Why do I say this? It's because observability, not data per se, but just observability has been around in infrastructure and applications for over a decade. And there are some heavy hitting companies in this space that have done extremely well. Splunk, Datadog, Dynatrace,
Mm.
AppDynamics, New Relic, Sumo Logic. The list is vast. Why do we have so many companies doing observability? Is because it's so important for them to track how's the application performing, how the packets are being moved, how's the security and firewalls and all of the infrastructure pieces. Well, guess what? All that infrastructure is moving to the cloud. So AWS cares about it, Google Cloud, Microsoft, Azure, they all care about it. But as an end user, I only care about my data. So why
Mm.
would I not have a full visibility into how's my data moving in a pipeline from data producers to data transformation engines, whether it's DBT or consumers like Looker or what is happening in Snowflake with all the transformations that get pushed down. So data observability is a way for me to get a full stack visibility. For example, data quality. How is my data quality changing? uh, Performance, but performance at data level, Spark level, for instance,
Mm.
infrastructure, how cost effective it is, even FinOps. Now we are in a little bit of a tight market situation. We are
Mhm.
not as much into throw as many resources to get the best performance. It is cost is a very important thing. So I need to know how's my query, resources is it consuming. All of these things are the metrics that data observability vendors will collect, visualize it in some sort of a time series graph, do some sort of a prediction into what will be your cost or what can break down the road. So they're being proactive. It is not just notifying you that something broke, go fix it. But they do that. So they have alerts and notifications. If something breaks, in my very diverse, heterogeneous data and analytics ecosystem, how do I know where it broke? So, doing that root cause analysis is one of the tasks that data observability products have. Does it
Great explanation. That does definitely help. So, look, we were all familiar with monitoring because you got to
Yes.
monitoring your services, make sure that that your application server, your web server is meeting load and all that kind of stuff. So, I think what you're saying is like applying that same set of visibility to data, not just to the hardware and software infrastructure that you're managing.
Right.
Very good. Very good. Okay, I got it. So, data ops was the last
Yeah.
sort of topic that you are really covering,
Yeah.
Sanjeev. So, what's happening in the world of data ops, and help us understand why data ops and that concept, because that word and term is used a lot, why we should care.
Thank you for asking that. I think data ops is yet another super critical, important space. But again, like everything, it's confusing. The terms can mean different things. In fact, just a few years ago, everybody was calling themselves a data ops company because what the way people define data ops is you've got the data producer and you got data consumers. Everything in between is data ops, but that's incorrect. What is in between data producer and a data consumer is data management. Overly, the data management layer is data ops. Let me define it to the next layer. What is data management? ELT. I have products and tools, approaches for doing replication, chain data capture, ingestion of data. Then I do data transformation, integrate that data with multiple different places, create my data models, persist it in some sort of data lake or lake house or cloud data warehouse. Then I do my analytics and I have my semantic layer, governance, all of that. All of this is data management. So what is data ops? Data ops is how do I do my code development and configuration in an automated manner so I can do my testing and very quickly push my code from my development environment to QA to prod. So data ops can be applied to anything. maybe I use a BI tool, and the BI tool lets me create my reports and dashboards. But how do I do it so I have version control and I can push different versions of my report into my GitHub? If there is something wrong, I can, revert back. So doing this continuous integration, continuous development and deployment, CI/CD, testing as far ahead, automating this whole process, introducing collaboration, all of these things fall in data ops. Data ops is a layer that you put on top of data management. You can put it on top of your building your business logic, or you can put it on top of your maybe cloud migration initiative. So that's why data ops is so important. Again, going back to observability, observability has existed for the longest time on the application side. We used to call it
Yep.
AP, application performance management. Now it's data. Same thing with data ops. DevOps came into existence in 2007, and we've been applying agile development practices to software development. So it's taken a few years, but now data has caught up to those best practices. So data ops, to make a long story short, is actually a collection of techniques and practices and technologies.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a software developer, so I understand DevOps. I understand what that means, and to me, it's like that's the analogy, right? It's really those software principles that we've been honing over the years. We're now applying it to our data pipelines with the same kind of rigor. And so you're right. Observability is similar to that. It's like all these sort of best practices that have been, haven't been applied to data. Data has been sort of the Wild West. We're starting to get a little bit. We're starting to get a little bit more buttoned up, aren't we, when it comes to data and creating data products?
Correct. Yeah, data has lived in its own silo for the longest time, owned by the data people. There is a reason why applications and infrastructure got more structured and data has taken its time, because data is a different beast. Applications don't change that often. Infrastructure changes. It's a major event when the infrastructure changes. Data changes all the time. You're ingesting data, everything is fine, and then a pipeline breaks somewhere, or something happens, and data quality goes out the window. If you don't observe it, you will not know till the CFO finds out and says, this report is wrong. And then all the hell breaks loose because the CFO is putting the pressure on IT. IT becomes reactive. So observability is trying to avoid that, and so is data ops. Actually, observability is part of data ops overall. You think about it.
Yep.
So look at Kubernetes. Now, we're not going to go into Kubernetes today, but I just want to draw a point. Kubernetes came out to make this whole compute infrastructure sort of self-healing and automated, but it was for stateless applications. What happens if an application crashes? Kubernetes kicks in, said, no problem, I brought it back up. What happens if your database crashes? It's a totally different. Your data could be corrupted. So it took Kubernetes years before data could adopt it. So it's a natural progression. Data has a state, can get corrupted, and it takes time for data to adopt some of these best practices.
Yeah, I love that. It's an exciting time for data and analytics, and data and analytics leaders have a lot to think about. But I think it's really a renaissance when you think about it, right? I think we're coming out of sort of the dark ages where we had stone tools and knives, and we're starting to actually, really do something that's more akin to what we've learned in application development realm and the like.
Exciting times.
It's exciting time. So, Sanjeev, and you're so good at explaining things in a way that simplifies and not a bunch of words and not a word salad. So you've been fantastic to help me and the rest of the audience understand what these things mean. So before I let you go, I'm going to ask you to predict the future. So Sanjeev, what do you think is going to happen over the next, I'm not even going to say 10 years. That's way too long. Even
Yeah.
the next 3 to 5 years, what do you think that we should have top of mind in terms of looking at and thinking about as a data and analytics leader?
So I see the big challenge and where the movement is in simplification of our data architecture. It's become just overly complicated. It's literally a 24/7 job. And
Mm-hmm.
if I'm doing this 24/7, it's okay because that's my job. I'm a research analyst. But Dave, you've got a company to run. Businesses have their day jobs. How are they supposed to keep up with this technology? So, I don't want to pick on some technologies, but work that Databricks, Snowflake are doing, for example.
Mm-hmm.
They are introducing more features and sort of trying to have an integrated environment, uh, so you don't need to always go best of breed. Now, you do have to go best of breed for many cases when you are in a hybrid multi-cloud environment, because one vendor is not going to give you everything that you need. But I do see that there is an attempt to abstract the technical details. Now, when I go to conferences, I'll give you a very simple example. I've been to a bunch of conferences this year, and it just amuses me that a few years ago at those conferences, people were asking about master data management. This
Mm-hmm.
year, no, they're not asking about MDM. They're saying, I have a business problem to solve. How do I do it?
Right.
So I,
Person.
yeah, so that is the shift that I see happening, where people are very keen to abstract the technology, let technologists take care of it, but the business needs to get self-service, low code, no code. People are on both sides of the aisle, whether it's a good thing or not. But having that self-service, that ability uh, to create applications, run them, bring them up and down, and not have to worry about resources. So that's why you see this so much emphasis on serverless these days.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not even SaaS. SaaS was great. SaaS is perfect. In fact,
Yeah.
I'm right now attending this premier SaaS conference called SaaSter. But even in SaaS, you have to figure out sometimes, okay, what cluster, what do I need? Serverless takes it even a step further. I don't even know there's any infrastructure. It's an API call for me.
Yeah, I'm completely with you on that. Look, nobody wants to manage infrastructure. They just want to get results, and that's what the you know the cloud has really helped us really accelerate down that path, hasn't it? And serverless is just another step along that path. But Sanjeev, this has been amazing. I always love talking to you. I always learn so much when I talk to you. So thank you so much for joining the podcast, and to everybody out there, stay data driven.